Have you ever felt the sharp, invisible sting of injustice? A wound that festers not on your skin, but deep within your spirit. Have you ever watched someone you loved, someone who gave everything, be diminished, forgotten, or worse, exploited after they were gone? This is not just a story of a woman. It is a testament to the quiet, unyielding power of resolve, born from the ashes of betrayal. It is a story about Nicole Armstrong, a name that would come to echo through the corridors of Denver's real estate world, a name once whispered in sorrow, later spoken with awe. Her journey began not in triumph, but in the desolate quiet of a loss that ripped her world apart, a loss compounded by a discovery so cruel, it redefined the very meaning of the word betrayal. Nicole's mother, Eleanor, was a woman of simple tastes and profound wisdom, a tireless worker who, through decades of quiet sacrifice, had built a small nest egg. It wasn't vast wealth, but it was security, a promise for a future she had diligently woven thread by thread. Eleanor's life was a masterclass in giving, a relentless outpouring of love and support for Nicole, her only child. When Eleanor succumbed to a sudden illness, the world shifted on its axis for Nicole. The funeral was a blur of muted colors and hushed condolences, a parade of well-meaning faces Nicole barely registered through the haze of her grief. And then, there was Valerie. Valerie, her stepmother, a woman whose presence had always felt more like a perfectly sculpted porcelain doll than a warm, breathing human. Valerie, who had married Nicole's father late in his life, and whose elegant, uncreased face seemed incapable of true emotion. At the reading of the will, Valerie was composed, almost serene. The lawyer, a man whose voice seemed to carry the weight of all the world's sorrows, read through the bequests, each one a faint echo of Eleanor's generous spirit. But then came the crucial detail, the mention of Eleanor's personal savings, the fund meant for Nicole's future, for her dreams, for a comfort Eleanor had never truly known herself. And it was gone. Not gone in the sense of being mismanaged, or lost, or even spent on some noble cause. It was gone because Valerie had, with meticulous precision, emptied the accounts, transferring the entirety of Eleanor's life's work into a private trust. Nicole's heart seized, a cold, sharp claw tightening around her lungs. She looked at Valerie, whose eyes were as unreadable as polished stone. My mother's savings? Nicole's voice was a ragged whisper, barely audible above the rustle of legal papers. Valerie offered a small, almost imperceptible smile, a delicate raising of her perfectly manicured hand. "Oh, darling," she cooed, her voice like silk over shattered glass. "Your mother would have wanted it to be put to good use, something truly transformative." And then, the words that would haunt Nicole for years, the words that would become the cornerstone of her silent vow. "I'm launching my dream project, a luxury spa. It's going to be called Eleanor's Oasis. A tribute, you see. A truly fitting legacy." Nicole felt the floor drop out from beneath her. A spa. A vanity project. Eleanor's painstaking savings, the fruit of decades of quiet sacrifice, squandered on a monument to Valerie's ego. The injustice was a physical blow, sharper than any grief. Valerie, with her perfectly coiffed hair and designer clothes, had taken everything, leaving Nicole not just bereft of her mother, but stripped of the security Eleanor had fought so hard to provide. The words echoed. A tribute, you see. No, it was a desecration. It was a theft, not just of money, but of a mother's last loving gesture. In that moment, watching Valerie preen, Nicole felt a seed of something cold and powerful take root within her. It was not anger, not yet. It was a desolate, burning clarity. She would remember this, every detail, every insult, every penny. And one day, Valerie would understand the true meaning of a fitting legacy. The initial shock gave way to a pervasive, suffocating grief that settled deep in Nicole's bones. She moved through the days in a haze, the world outside her feeling muted, distant. The revelation about her mother's savings, the brazen appropriation by Valerie, twisted the knife in her fresh wound. It wasn't just the money, it was the violation of her mother's memory, the callous disregard for a lifetime of hard work and love. Valerie, seemingly oblivious to the seismic shift she had caused within Nicole, continued to glide through her life, now consumed by the grand vision of Eleanor's oasis. Brochures began to appear, sleek and glossy, featuring images of serene women draped in towels, bathed in golden light. Valerie's face, always impeccably made up, graced many of the promotional materials, a testament to her self-proclaimed role as the visionary behind this tribute. She spoke of chakra balancing, of holistic wellness, of a sanctuary for the soul, all while building it on the broken promise of a deceased woman's last wishes. Nicole found herself dwelling in a silent world of her own making, a world where the echo of her mother's laughter mingled with the bitter taste of betrayal. She watched Valerie from a distance, the elegant facade of the spa rising from the ground, a constant, physical reminder of the injustice. It was a tangible monument to Valerie's avarice, a daily affront that fueled a quiet, steady fire within Nicole. There were days she felt utterly powerless, swallowed by the enormity of her loss and the brazenness of Valerie's actions. The initial waves of despair were followed by a raw, simmering anger, an emotion she rarely allowed herself to feel. But beneath the anger, something else was taking shape, a steely resolve. It was not a violent urge, nor a fleeting desire for petty revenge. It was a deep-seated conviction, cold and precise, that justice, true and unwavering, must be served. She had no resources then, no power, no influence. She was just a young woman, fresh out of college, navigating a world that suddenly felt far more cruel and complex than she had ever imagined. Her initial career path, a safe, predictable route in administrative support, now felt utterly inadequate. She needed something more, something that would arm her with the knowledge and the leverage to fight a battle she knew, deep down, she was destined to wage. That was when the idea of real estate began to crystallize. It wasn't a passion, not at first. It was a strategic decision, a cold, hard calculation. Real estate, she realized, was about property, about ownership, about the intricate dance of assets and liabilities. It was about understanding value, seeing opportunities, and navigating the complex legal and financial currents that governed ownership. If she wanted to reclaim what was lost, to truly make Valerie understand the weight of her transgression, she needed to understand the very ground on which Valerie stood. She started slowly, meticulously. She devoured books, attended seminars, absorbing every detail about zoning laws, market trends, property valuations. She learned about distressed assets, about the vulnerability of over-leveraged businesses, about the delicate ecosystem of commercial property. It was grueling, solitary work, often stretching late into the night. Her grief became a silent companion, a quiet hum beneath the surface of her relentless focus. Every spreadsheet she analyzed, every contract she drafted, every negotiation she shadowed, was a step towards a future where she would not be powerless. She was learning to build, not just a career, but a weapon of quiet precision, aimed at the heart of Valerie's ill-gotten gains. Her vision was clear, sharp, and unforgiving. One day, Eleanor's oasis would belong to her, and the invoice would be paid in full. Years peeled away like layers of old wallpaper, each one revealing a stronger, more defined version of Nicole Armstrong. The young woman shattered by grief and betrayal had been meticulously rebuilt, brick by silent brick, into a formidable force in Denver's competitive real estate market. She had started at the very bottom, taking on thankless tasks, enduring dismissive remarks, and working hours that blurred the line between dedication and obsession. But she learned. Oh, how she learned. She learned the subtle art of negotiation, the strategic dance of finance, the delicate balance of human ambition and market reality. She developed an almost preternatural ability to spot undervalued properties, to foresee market shifts, and to close deals that others deemed impossible. Her reputation grew, slowly at first, then with an unstoppable momentum. Colleagues spoke of her quiet intensity, her meticulous preparation, her uncanny knack for turning a stagnant asset into a goldmine. Clients trusted her implicitly, drawn to her unwavering honesty and her steely resolve. She wasn't flashy, didn't seek the spotlight, and often preferred to let her results speak for themselves. She was a hidden gem, steadily accumulating power and influence, her true motivations a secret held close to her heart. All the while, in the periphery of her carefully constructed world, Eleanor's oasis continued to exist. It was a physical manifestation of the debt Valerie owed, a constant, shimmering mirage in Nicole's peripheral vision. The spa, for all its glossy brochures and Valerie's relentless self-promotion, never quite flourished as she had envisioned. It struggled, a drain on Valerie's dwindling personal funds, constantly teetering on the brink of financial collapse. Nicole watched its trajectory with a detached clinical interest, like a seasoned hunter observing her prey. She noted its declining occupancy rates, the increasing staff turnover, the subtle yet undeniable signs of neglect that even Valerie's superficial touch-ups couldn't fully conceal. Valerie, true to form, maintained her facade of effortless luxury, yet behind the scenes, whispers of mounting debt and desperate measures began to circulate. Nicole, with her vast network of contacts in the financial and real estate sectors, heard them all. She had cultivated relationships with bankers, with property managers, with developers, individuals who respected her discretion and her sharp business acumen. These connections, built over years of tireless work, now provided her with invaluable intelligence, painting a clear picture of the spa's precarious financial health. She knew the original acquisition cost, the crippling interest rates Valerie was paying, the balloon payments looming like specters on the horizon. The spa was an elegant, decaying trap, closing in on itself. As the market tightened and interest rates climbed, Valerie found herself increasingly cornered. She tried to secure additional loans, but her collateral was weak, her business plan flimsy, and her credit history a patchwork of desperate fixes. The banks, cautious and skeptical, saw through her polished exterior to the fragile foundation beneath. They were the cynical gatekeepers, seeing only risk where Valerie saw only her unearned privilege. They would not take a risk on a vanity project, no matter how elegantly presented. Nicole, meanwhile, continued to thrive. Her own financial standing was impeccable, her portfolio robust, her reputation unassailable. The gap between her and Valerie, once a chasm of emotional pain and financial disparity, had slowly, inexorably reversed. She was no longer the powerless victim. She was the architect of her own destiny, and the potential instrument of another's reckoning. The time, she realized, was approaching. The opportune moment, precise and inevitable, was finally within reach. The whispers intensified, growing louder, more insistent, like the restless murmur of a coming storm. Eleanor's oasis was bleeding money, a lavish sinkhole for Valerie's remaining fortune. Nicole, now a recognized force in Denver real estate, heard it from every corner of her vast professional network. Mortgage brokers subtly hinted at delinquent payments. Property managers grumbled about neglected maintenance requests from the spa's increasingly desperate management. Even the gossip at high-end charity galas, which Nicole now attended as an equal among the city's elite, confirmed the dire state of Valerie's prized possession. The spa was no longer a symbol of aspirational luxury. It was becoming a public liability, a testament to unchecked vanity and unsustainable debt. Valerie, for all her outward composure, was visibly fraying. Her perfectly coiffed hair seemed a little less precise, her designer clothes a little less pristine. The strain was showing, etched in the subtle tightening around her eyes, the nervous twitch of her impeccably gloved hands. She had begun to discreetly float feelers, testing the waters for a potential sale. She desperately needed to offload the burden, to escape the crushing weight of the spa's failing finances before it dragged her entirely under. This was the opportunity Nicole had meticulously, patiently, waited for. It wasn't a matter of luck. It was the culmination of years of strategic positioning, of understanding the market better than anyone else, and of cultivating relationships that provided her with an unparalleled stream of information. A junior broker, eager to impress Nicole, cautiously approached her with a peculiar listing, a high-end spa, discreetly marketed as a distressed asset opportunity, with the owner requiring utmost confidentiality. The broker knew Nicole's reputation for handling complex, sensitive deals and her uncanny ability to turn around failing properties. Nicole's eyes, usually cool and analytical, held a flicker of something deeper, a spark of recognition. She asked for the address. When the broker supplied it, Eleanor's Oasis, the name hung in the air, thick with unspoken history. The moment was almost surreal, the universe conspiring to deliver what she had so patiently sought. But direct acquisition was out of the question. Valerie, for all her superficiality, was not entirely foolish. She would never sell directly to Nicole. The animosity between them, though largely unspoken, was a palpable undercurrent whenever they happened to cross paths at social events. Valerie would suspect, would object, would rather see the spa crumble than let Nicole get her hands on it. Nicole needed an untraceable path, a labyrinth of transactions that would conceal her true identity until the very last moment. This was where her expertise truly came into play. She assembled a small, trusted team: a corporate lawyer renowned for his discretion, a financial analyst with an ironclad non-disclosure agreement, and a network of shell companies and blind trusts she had established over the years for complex, strategic acquisitions. The task was fraught with potential pitfalls. Every step had to be perfectly orchestrated, every document reviewed with microscopic precision. There was no room for error. The slightest misstep, the smallest hint of her involvement, and Valerie would pull the plug, preferring to drown in debt than concede victory to Nicole. The stakes were not merely financial, they were deeply personal, a decade-long quest for equilibrium, for a justice that money alone could never fully buy. The game was on, and Nicole, the overlooked virtuoso, was ready to play her final, winning hand. The intricate dance of acquisition began. Nicole, working in absolute secrecy, became a phantom buyer. She navigated a maze of shell corporations, offshore accounts, and third-party proxies, each layer designed to obscure her ultimate involvement. Her corporate lawyer, a man named Arthur Vance, a stoic and seasoned professional, was the only one who truly understood the full scope of her plan. He had initially raised an eyebrow at the sheer complexity, the deliberate obfuscation, but Nicole's calm resolve and the undeniable financial viability of her strategy had quickly won him over. He saw not just a client, but a brilliant strategist driven by an extraordinary, unspoken purpose. "This is highly unusual, Nicole," Arthur had stated in his clipped, precise tones during one of their late-night calls. "The layers of separation. It's almost theatrical." Nicole had simply replied, "Some debts require a grander stage, Arthur, and a more memorable curtain call." Valerie, meanwhile, was growing desperate. The initial inquiries from prospective buyers, all orchestrated by Nicole's proxies, had been lowball offers, designed to erode Valerie's confidence and reinforce the spa's declining value. The bank, weary of extending credit, was now applying significant pressure, threatening foreclosure. Valerie was caught in a vice, her once immaculate facade cracking under the strain. She saw the spa not just as a financial drain, but as a public monument to her failing judgment. Her arrogance, once her shield, was now her greatest weakness. She scoffed at the initial offers, convinced her vision was still worth millions, but as the weeks turned into months and the bank's demands grew sharper, her resistance crumbled. Her lawyers, equally exasperated, urged her to take whatever she could get. The primary obstacle, the cynical gatekeeper in this unfolding drama, wasn't a person, but Valerie's own inflated sense of self-worth and her stubborn refusal to acknowledge reality. Nicole allowed just enough time for Valerie to reach her breaking point, for desperation to eclipse pride. Then, through a carefully constructed chain of transactions, her primary proxy, a seemingly unrelated investment firm with an impeccable track record, made a firm, all-cash offer. It was a fair offer, considering the spa's distressed status, but still significantly below Valerie's initial delusional asking price. Valerie, left with no other viable options and convinced this was her only way out, grudgingly accepted. The closing date was set, a date Nicole had marked on her personal calendar with a silent, simmering anticipation. She made sure all the paperwork was meticulously prepared, every clause ironed out, every legal loophole closed. The contract included a specific clause, buried deep within the technical jargon, requiring Valerie to be present at the final signing, not merely for her signature, but for due diligence and final handover of operational specifics. It was a seemingly innocuous detail, designed solely for this moment. Nicole envisioned the scene with crystalline clarity, a tableau that had played out countless times in her mind during the long, arduous years of her climb. The lawyers, the stern faces, the rustle of papers, the quiet solemnity of a major transaction. And at the center, Valerie, ready to relinquish her failing dream, completely unaware of the true orchestrator of her downfall. The final act was upon them, a decade in the making. The stage was set for a reckoning that would transcend mere financial exchange, transforming it into a profound delivery of justice. The day of the closing arrived, a crisp Denver morning, the air carrying the scent of impending change. The conference room was stark and formal, a long, polished table reflecting the tense faces gathered around it. Arthur Vance, Nicole's lawyer, sat opposite Valerie's legal team, his expression as impassive as granite. Valerie herself was there, radiating an air of resigned irritation, eager to shed the burden of Eleanor's oasis and move on. She didn't bother to hide her disdain for the situation, constantly checking her watch, her jaw subtly tightened. Nicole entered the room last, her steps deliberate, her posture radiating a quiet power. She wore a simple, tailored suit, her hair pulled back neatly. Her eyes, though calm, held a depth that hinted at untold stories. Valerie barely registered her presence, offering a dismissive nod, assuming Nicole was merely a junior associate of the acquiring firm, there to observe. This was the moment Nicole had played out in her mind 1,000 times, the culmination of years of quiet planning, relentless work, and unwavering resolve. The contracts, thick stacks of legal paper, were spread across the table. Signatures were exchanged, papers shuffled, the air thick with the unspoken gravity of the transaction. Valerie signed quickly, almost carelessly, her pen scratching across the signature line, eager to be done with it. When all the necessary documents had been executed, and the transfer of ownership was legally complete, Arthur Vance cleared his throat. "Now," he announced, his voice carrying surprising weight in the quiet room, "for the final, and perhaps most important, piece of business. As per the contractual agreement, the new owner of record wishes to introduce herself and discuss the future operational specifics of the spa." Valerie frowned, a flicker of annoyance crossing her features. "Operational specifics? Can't that be handled by my former manager? I'm quite busy." Her eyes still hadn't truly focused on Nicole. Arthur simply nodded towards Nicole. "Miss Armstrong, if you please." Nicole rose slowly, deliberately, her gaze finally meeting Valerie's across the polished table. Valerie's eyes narrowed, a flicker of recognition, then confusion, then disbelief. Her perfectly sculpted composure began to crack, a faint tremor running through her. "Nicole? What are you? What is this?" she stammered, her voice losing its silky edge. Nicole walked to the head of the table, placing her hands flat on the polished surface, her voice clear and resonant, filling the room. "Valerie, this is indeed me. And this, she swept her hand across the signed contracts, is the transfer of ownership for Eleanor's oasis. I am the new owner. The silence that followed was absolute, deafening. Valerie's face went white, then mottled with crimson. Her eyes darted from Nicole to her lawyers, then back again, searching for an escape, a logical explanation for this impossible turn of events. You. But. How? This is impossible. You don't have that kind of money. This is some trick. She spluttered, her voice rising in pitch, her carefully constructed facade crumbling into shards. Nicole simply smiled, a thin, knowing smile that held no warmth, only a profound sense of closure. It's no trick, Valerie. It's the culmination of years of hard work. And this, she reached into her briefcase, pulling out a single, crisp, perfectly folded document, is the final invoice. She slid it across the table. It was not a typical invoice. It was a single sheet of paper, a precise calculation. At the top, in bold, stark lettering, were the words, Invoice for services rendered, restitution of Eleanor Armstrong's legacy. Below it, meticulously itemized, were the precise figures. The exact amount of Eleanor's life savings, adjusted for inflation over the decade. Then, an additional line item, cost of emotional distress and disrespect of deceased's wishes, quantified in a symbolic, yet substantial, sum. The total was staggering, far more than the spa's final sale price. This isn't money you owe me, Valerie, Nicole said, her voice dropping to a low, intense tone that commanded the room. This is the cost of your actions, it's the price of justice, and it's paid in full. Valerie stared at the invoice, her breath catching in her throat, her face a mask of dawning horror and utter defeat. The room seemed to shrink around her, the weight of a decade of betrayal finally crushing her under its immense, unforgiving truth. The invoice wasn't for money. It was for an accounting of the soul, a profound and undeniable declaration that the forgotten would be remembered, and the wronged, ultimately, would prevail. Valerie crumbled. The perfectly coiffed hair seemed to wilt, her designer suit appeared to sag, and her carefully constructed composure shattered into a million pieces. She looked at the invoice, then at Nicole, then back at the document, as if trying to decipher a cruel, alien language. Her lips moved, but no coherent sound emerged. Her lawyers, equally stunned by the theatrical revelation, looked away, embarrassed, realizing they had been unwitting pawns in a much larger, personal game. The silence in the room stretched, thick with Valerie's humiliation and Nicole's quiet triumph. Valerie had lived a life of superficiality, believing that appearances were everything, that the wealthy could always escape consequence. But Nicole had just proven her devastatingly wrong. The true antagonist, not merely Valerie herself, but the systemic carelessness and entitlement she represented, was being dismantled, brick by brick, in that very room. The power dynamic, warped for so long by Valerie's ill-gotten gains and emotional manipulation, had shifted irreversibly. Nicole did not gloat. There was no theatrical flourish, no triumphant laugh. Her satisfaction was deeper, colder, and infinitely more profound. It was the satisfaction of a craftsman whose masterpiece was finally complete. She had not sought revenge in the common sense of the word. She had sought balance, restitution, and a validation of her mother's inherent worth that Valerie had so carelessly dismissed. The spa is now mine, Valerie, Nicole stated, her voice devoid of any emotion, free and clear. And with this, she tapped the invoice, your debt, at least in my eyes, is settled. Valerie finally found her voice, a raw, strangled sound. You conniving little, this is extortion. This is a personal vendetta. Nicole simply met her gaze, unblinking. No, Valerie, this is the truth. This is what my mother worked for. This is what you took. And this is the full accounting. Her eyes held a flicker of the grief that had fueled her journey. Eleanor's oasis will be transformed, not into a monument to vanity, but into a place of true healing. A place where every penny contributes to genuine wellness, not superficial pretense. Valerie, utterly defeated, could only stare. Her empire, built on sand and someone else's sacrifice, had finally collapsed. She left the room a broken woman, stripped not just of a property, but of the illusion of her untouchability. The news of the acquisition, once public, sent ripples through Denver's elite circles. The story, whispered at first, then openly discussed, was one of incredible strategic brilliance and quiet, unyielding resolve. Nicole Armstrong's name became synonymous not just with sharp real estate acumen, but with integrity and a fierce sense of justice. She became an icon of empowerment, a woman who had quietly navigated the treacherous waters of personal betrayal and emerged victorious, not through aggression, but through methodical, patient brilliance. The initial astonishment turned into profound respect. Her peers and clients recognized the depth of her character, understanding that her professional success was rooted in a personal ethic that transcended mere profit. She didn't seek the spotlight, but it found her, illuminating the path she had carved out of pain and purpose. The dust settled, and the grand facade of Eleanor's oasis stood silent for a time, a dormant chrysalis awaiting its transformation. Nicole, now the undisputed owner, did not indulge in triumphalism. Her victory felt less like a conquest and more like a profound healing. The weight she had carried for so long began to lift, replaced by a quiet sense of purpose. She had taken back what was unjustly seized, not to destroy, but to rebuild, to honor. Her first act was to systematically audit every aspect of the spa's operations, from its financial records to its staff morale. What she found was a reflection of Valerie's management, inefficiency, neglect, and a cynical disregard for the well-being of both employees and clients. It was clear the spa needed more than just a change of ownership. It needed a complete spiritual overhaul. Nicole did not close the spa. She reimagined it. She rebranded it, removing Valerie's pretentious and ill-fitting Eleanor's Oasis moniker. The new name, thoughtfully chosen, was the Eleanor Legacy Wellness Center. It was a subtle yet powerful statement, honoring her mother's memory not through superficiality, but through authentic service. She invested heavily, not in gaudy decor or fleeting trends, but in the heart of the business, its people, and its purpose. She brought in a new management team, ethical and experienced. She retained the few loyal staff members who had endured Valerie's capricious reign, offering them better pay, improved benefits, and a workplace culture rooted in respect and genuine care. She commissioned local artists to create calming, natural aesthetics, replacing the sterile opulence with warmth and authenticity. The spa's services were meticulously curated to focus on genuine therapeutic benefits, not just superficial pampering. She introduced community outreach programs, offering discounted wellness sessions to underserved populations, a tangible echo of her mother's selfless spirit. The transformation was slow, deliberate, and deeply authentic. Word spread, not just of a new owner, but of a new ethos. Clients, drawn by the genuine care and the quality of the services, flocked to the Eleanor Legacy Wellness Center. It became a sanctuary, a place where people truly felt cared for, where the healing was palpable and real. The irony was not lost on those who remembered Valerie's hollow promises. Where Valerie's vanity project had floundered, Nicole's sincere vision flourished, becoming a thriving enterprise and a beacon of ethical business practice. The profit, when it came, was not the primary driver. It was a byproduct of integrity, of putting people and purpose before greed. Nicole felt her mother's presence in the quiet hum of the redesigned spa, in the satisfied smiles of the clients, in the renewed energy of the staff. Her mother's legacy, once plundered and desecrated, was now a vibrant, living testament to the values Eleanor had embodied: hard work, compassion, and an unwavering belief in the inherent dignity of every human being. The profound sense of peace that settled over Nicole was unlike any she had known. It was the peace of a debt repaid, not in kind, but in a higher currency of honor and justice. The Eleanor Legacy Wellness Center became more than just a successful business. It became a symbol in Denver, a quiet testament to the power of transformation. It was a place where stories of resilience were subtly woven into the fabric of daily life, where the memory of Eleanor Armstrong lived on, not as a name on a gilded sign, but as the underlying principle of service and genuine care. Nicole, now firmly established as a respected and influential figure, continued her work in real estate, expanding her portfolio, always guided by the same ethical compass that had driven her journey. Her unique story, though never fully publicized by her, became an open secret among those who mattered, cementing her reputation as a woman of unparalleled integrity and formidable strategic depth. She cultivated a quiet leadership, demonstrating through action that true power lay not in accumulation, but in purpose, not in taking, but in rebuilding. She became a mentor to young professionals, subtly imparting lessons not just of market dynamics, but of personal fortitude and the enduring value of doing what is right, even when the path is long and arduous. Valerie, stripped of her false prestige and burdened by the full weight of her financial misdeeds, quietly faded from the Denver social scene. The public spectacle of her downfall was not what Nicole had sought, but the private reckoning was complete. Valerie's vanity project, once her symbol of status, now stood as a constant reminder of her hubris, repurposed by the very person she had wronged. There was no direct communication between them, no lingering bitterness on Nicole's part. The invoice had settled everything. The scars of betrayal remained, faint echoes of a painful past, but they no longer defined Nicole. Instead, they served as reminders of her strength, her capacity for perseverance, and the deep, unwavering love for her mother that had ignited her decade-long quest. Her journey, born from despair, had culminated not in vengeance, but in liberation from the chains of injustice, and the freedom to build a life aligned with her deepest values. The quiet, overlooked virtuoso had emerged, not as a celebrity, but as a silent force for good, a testament to the transformative power of a determined spirit. She had turned a profound personal wound into a catalyst for an extraordinary life, proving that the most powerful legacies are often forged in the fires of adversity, shaped by unwavering resolve, and paid for not just with money, but with the full measure of one's integrity. The Eleanor Legacy Wellness Center continued to thrive, a beacon of authenticity in a world often swayed by superficiality. It stood as a living monument, not to a grand architect, but to a quiet, loving woman whose values, once exploited, had been meticulously reclaimed and brilliantly amplified. In the end, what truly matters? Is it the grand gestures, the fleeting spotlight, or the quiet, unyielding commitment to what is right? Nicole Armstrong's story is a profound reminder that the deepest wounds often hold the seeds of our greatest strength. She started with nothing but a broken heart and a burning sense of injustice, and through sheer will, through quiet study, and through a relentless pursuit of competence, she reshaped her world. Her journey teaches us that true power isn't about crushing your adversaries, it's about elevating yourself, about building something meaningful from the ashes of betrayal. It's about understanding that justice isn't always loud. Sometimes, it's a meticulously planned, patiently executed whisper that reverberates far louder than any shout. Her mother's legacy was not just reclaimed, it was magnified, transformed from a private loss into a public good, a testament to the enduring power of integrity over greed. So, what will you build with the challenges life throws your way? Will you let injustice define you, or will you let it ignite a quiet fire within, urging you to rise, to learn, to transform, and ultimately, to create a legacy of your own? Think about the silent battles being fought around you, the unseen struggles, the hidden potential yearning to break free. What if the person you overlook today holds the key to an extraordinary tomorrow? What if the most profound acts of triumph are not shouted from the rooftops, but quietly, precisely executed, like a master craftsman at work? Consider the unseen potential in every quiet corner, the hidden depths in every unassuming soul. The world is full of untold stories waiting for their moment of recognition, waiting for someone to see beyond the surface, to understand the true value of quiet strength and unwavering resolve. Let Nicole's story be a testament to the fact that the path to true empowerment often begins in the shadows, nurtured by purpose, and culminates in a triumph that benefits not just one, but many. What injustice weighs on your heart, and what quiet, determined steps are you willing to take to transform it into a force for good? Share this story, not just as an account of victory, but as an inspiration for every soul who has ever felt overlooked, misunderstood, or wronged. Let it be a reminder that patience, persistence, and an unshakable belief in justice can indeed turn the tide, proving that some debts are best repaid, not in kind, but in an enduring legacy that shines brighter than any fleeting triumph. Find your own truth, embrace your quiet strength, and remember, the most profound change often begins with a single, resolute step, taken in silence, but reverberating through eternity.